Easter Sunday.
Wait a second. Okay. Let me get over here and make one with you. I'm right around you. This is Ivan Hinton, who happens to be my dad, and this happens to be his birthday, celebrating number 92. For family and friends, we're going to try to record some stuff about his family and life, so we'll have it now and have it hereafter. Thank you much. Go ahead, Pop. Tell them all about it.
In 1929, on Easter Sunday, I met a young lady with the name of Letha McKee. Went home with her, and ate Easter dinner Sunday with her, and our courtship started then. And on Christmas Day, the 29, we was united in marriage, and we was married 7 years before our first child was born. That was in 37. In 36, the last Sunday night in November, when I was converted, started the Christian life. That was before any of my family was born. My first child, Rose Carol Muse at this time, was born in June of 37. I was a Christian at that time, and in my Christian life, any one of my children would tell you that they never heard me say a smutty word of any kind, use any foul language. I was saved under the minister in a schoolhouse, Round County, Johnson School, at a revival. I'd already praying, wanting to get saved, and what really happened, I was in sin, had a brother, 15-year-old, died with pneumonia fever, and I sat by his bed each night, working every day, seen him suffer and die. He wasn't a Christian. In the Hinton family, when he died, my dad and my uncle and myself started the funeral home, make arrangements. Got a quarter of a mile from our home. I said, boys, is ever a shame? On earth, this is one of them. Not a Christian in the family. Nobody ever mentioned prayer. I prayed. I don't know about you fellas. You'll never catch me this way again. That was the middle of November. And on the last Sunday night in November, that little schoolhouse where I repented, started living for the Lord. That same schoolhouse as I got saved, immediately we started a youth service. They put me in as president of the youth service. We had good services. People started getting saved. And I was called a preacher from that time on. But I never really accepted the call as a preacher until about, what year was you born?
1944.
1944. I was called to preach. Started a minister in the schoolhouse. The church and a young minister, which was me, rode together. Well, within a 2 year, we built a church house, First Church of God, at a place called Johnson, Round County. And people kept getting saved. I pastored the church for 12 years. Growed, done good, had the church building up and everything in good shape. And on a Sunday morning, after I'd been preaching that 12 years, I told them to get him another pastor. I'd be there for another 30 days with them. I'd been called into evangelistic work. And I never named it to nobody till that morning. That afternoon, how God has a way of showing you that you're doing what He wants you to do. Nobody, only the church people, know that I said that morning. Had a telephone, and that night, not that I called people called me. Want me to preach a revival for them. That Sunday night I had 15 revivals scheduled. Never been a revival in my life that some people didn't get saved. Never called for anybody that asked me for revival. I just prayed and asked God if He wanted me to preach revival anywhere, for to lay it on the heart of the people of the church to ask me. And I just preached revivals all the time, and services all the time. I preached when I was in revivals. I preached 9 messages a week. That was each night of the week. And on Saturdays at that time, and from my early ministry, people some way liked to hear me preach. I'd preach on Saturdays afternoon somewhere where they wanted to hear me. Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and Sunday night. Different places where they wanted to hear me preach. And my ministry grew. Me and my wife, Nikki, was both Christians. And we worked together. God blessed our ministry. And we saw great things happen in them years. I could take a long time to get way around about talking about this, but I'll try to cut it not too long and tell you just exactly some things that happened. I preached revivals, and a lot of people would get saved. where there wasn't any churches in the community. One of them was Johnson, where I started my ministry. First Church of God. We built the first Church of God that was in that county. It was in Moorhead. And I was a pastor. Blue Banks, around county. Later I preached revival there. They wanted a church. I helped them get a church built. And in my ministry, I've seen would have revival. 5 First Church of God built. And every one of them, I got the land given to us to build a church on. People liked me. I talked to them. Some of them were sinners that gave the land. Built them churches, and they're all going strong today. Thank God for that. And my ministry is a blessing to me. It has been a blessing to me and my family. Like I said, didn't have a very child when I first got saved. But they're children of God, Christians. Some of them ministers. All of them claim to have Christ in their life, which I'm so thankful for. And I've really enjoyed my ministry and my family. To make a living, I was an automobile mechanic. Worked in an Oldsmobile garage in Moorhead for about 5 years. And I wanted to be with my family, boys, and had 3 boys. I was only with them at night. I was working of the day. I only know them for a few minutes and then they're asleep and go to work before they get up the next morning. So I wanted to be with my family, and I decided the way I could be with them and still my own garage, and went into business for myself. And God just blessed me as a mechanic to make a real good living, able to provide for my family, and preached anywhere I was called to preach, and worked and preached. I didn't just preach, I worked for the day and preached at night. As I said a while ago, I never preached revival there wasn't some people saved in, anywhere from 10, 15, 30, 40. Preached a camp meeting in nice town, Indiana, for 10 days. 150 people claimed victory in that camp meeting. My ministry has been great for seeing people get right with the Lord. As I said again, the church, there's 5 different churches built. I always didn't want a church to see they'd be in debt so bad they could never see a way out. And the 5 churches I helped to get built, there wasn't a one of them that stayed in debt over 2.5 years. At that time, they didn't have their church paid for. I'm thankful for that because they didn't have a debt hanging over the head and they couldn't see how they'd ever get paid. It wasn't paid. I've said this many times in late life. While I was able to accomplish what I did in my ministry, I just simply let God use me to His glory. Whatever He wanted me to do, that's what I done. I didn't depend on myself to have the message. I depended on the Lord to give me the message that would be needful for wherever I would be preaching, would get a hold of the heart of people, and they would feel the need of salvation and get right in the sight of the Lord. So I've enjoyed the ministry. It's been a great blessing to me. And the Bible tells us, a lot of people worry about this, about people watching it. But the Bible says, seeing we're compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset it, and run with patience the race that is set before us. For 66 years, I've been running that race. 92-year-old, got a reward waiting for me in glory. How soon I'll be moving over, I don't know. But I do know that I'm already almost ready for that great reward that's waiting for me in heaven, where we'll never have a pain, where all of God's people will be, where all the love of God will be closed inside, all evil on the outside, and where we'll sit around the throne of God and talk with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Use that many times in the ministry. And seeing that what the Bible says, there's no respect of person with God. If I'm going to talk with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I think I'm going to talk with all the family of God in glory. And that great day, I can prolong this out, but that's about the way I feel in my heart, and I thank God that God has been with me in my ministry. And the only reason I've had a good ministry, as I said a second or two ago, is because I let God use me to His glory. Thank the Lord for that.
I'm going to be off camera because there's nobody here to swing it back and forth, and I don't need to be on camera anyway. Let me ask you some questions, Dad, and get a little bit of information particular about some things. Tell me about the radio ministry you had in Moorhead, Kentucky. WMOR, I believe, was the radio station.
They had opened up a little radio station, Moorhead, Kentucky. The first message was preached on it, was on a Saturday at 11:30, and I'm the preacher that preached it. When I went to preach something that the Lord showed me that I hadn't ever thought of like that, the first thing they asked me if I wanted to sit down or stand up and preach. Well, that sounded awful to me to sit down and preach. And I said, I want to stand up. But when I said that, I thought the Lord sit down and make it good. So the least of your heart instead of the shape of your body. So I just preached there for, I believe it was about 5 or 6 years. It was a live service. Wasn't recorded any time. We just
Do you remember what year that you started? What year did they open up the station? Do you remember what year they opened the station? Okay. Tell me about some of the people that helped you on the radio station.
A young lady that Joy Lee Stinson lived right by the church house. Kathleen Manning lived pretty close. Joy Lee played music of about any kind, and they sang for me all the years. 5 years, I think. I might be a little mistaken. Might have been a little longer than that. They never missed a time of being there with a live service to sing, to be with me. They went with wife and myself. How they made it through college, I don't know, but they made it. Almost every night while I'd be preaching revivals, they'd be there singing, playing music. God just saved people so much. So, when the day is, when it'll be, I don't know. My funeral will be, Joy and Kathleen supposed to do the singing at the funeral. They wanted to work with in early life as Christians, and they could I could outlive them. See, since I'm so old, they've got old. person supposed to preach my funeral. And a lot of people knows Harold Mason Goodpasture in Claudel was going to help him, and he's already been gone for several years.
Tell me about Harold and some of the other, there was a number of young ministers that got into the ministry by going to help you in preaching revivals and the like that. Some of them lived in our home for a while. I remember them eating at our table and actually sleeping in my bed. So tell me about some of those.
Harold Mason Goodpasture stayed with me half his time. His dad and mother died when he was just a boy, and one of his brothers, sisters, one of them raised him. But he was at my house more than he was theirs. And a fellow by the name of Kenny Yoder, he was called into ministry, still preaching, and he lived with me for a long time. Both of them supposed to help in my funeral when that time comes, if they're still living. And God's blessed them so many times, and they enjoyed. Now, what I've done so much is I've been preaching for a while, and I had revivals about all the time. Young ministers needed a place to preach so the ministry could grow. So what I done in having revivals to try to help them, Harold Mason, Claudel, Clifford Hutchison, right on and on and on.
Well, who are the on and on and on? Do you remember the other names?
Yeah, I'll think it's more of
Ison?
Cecil Ison, and
Kenny Yoder, you already mentioned.
yeah, and another one I can't think right now. Anyhow, what I done was so they'd have a place to preach and get acquainted with people and try to help them. When I'd get a revival, I'd have one of them to help me, and they'd preach one night and I'd preach the next. And some of them has grew into being great ministers and pastors in churches, not small churches, but great large churches. The one at Johnson, where I said I pastored for 12 years, I don't know the pastor's name that's there right now.
Ben Furman.
Ben Furman. Anyhow, they've got a building there now that will hold right close to 300 people. And they have great service, and the church is really doing good. They had one I built in Jordantown in Virginia. It's still going. One in Jordantown. I know one at Roanoke, Virginia. Or Woody Pasture. What's the name of that one? I'll think of it in a minute, maybe.
It's Benton, just outside of Roanoke.
Yeah, just outside of Roanoke. What happened at that church, and I've been able to help a lot of churches that needed help. I thank God for that. It wasn't doing any good, and it was brought up in the ministers' meeting, Church of God ministers' meeting, and I was there. And since it wasn't doing anything, it was voted to be sold. Take the money and divide to the churches within Virginia, from one ministry to the other. And a fellow, I didn't know that when he called me, I was on the board of trustees, and somebody said if you can get Brother Hinton to help you, he can get that stopped. So he called me and asked me, I said what he was going to do, and I already know that. He said, do you reckon you could get that stopped? I said, well, I'll see what I can do. He said, what do you think ought to be done? I said, well, what it seems to me like and sounds to me like, the church has been there for years, and you have an old bunch of trustees, and they don't want to go in debt any. Sounds right. And I said, I believe if they would resign, I'd quit going to church, get a new bunch of board of trustees, it might come out of it. So it happened I was talking to one of them. If they want me to resign, I will. I said, they don't want you to quit coming to church. And they did, they done it. They done what I asked them to do. And my assistant pastor Woody, what's his name, Paul? He went to pastor the church. They built a new building. It's going strong after this many years. What a blessing it is. And several different times I went to places where the church was in debt and couldn't get out. Some way, somehow, I could get the money raised to pay the debt off. One where I pastored in Virginia, Red Hill. Church had been there some 50 years and never been out of debt. And I'd been there 15 months and had the debt paid off. And God's blessed me this way. I don't know how or why. I could tell you what some people said about me, but I'll get to that in a minute. I've always been able to have the money that we needed to do whatever we wanted to do and needed to do. Whoever I'd be pastoring church, never did run out of money but one time. It wasn't long as got gained back and had plenty of money to go on there. And what I started saying, people said, when I got up to take up some money, I could see dollar marks all around my head. So the people start smiling, the first thing you know, they'd be getting their bill pulled out. Anyhow, I don't know how much of that happened, but I do know that we never did have no trouble raising the money. But I always did do this, tried to show them exactly what we was doing with the money. That would encourage people to give money to help. And I'm so thankful for how the Lord has blessed and helped me. And it wasn't knowledge that I had. I want to say again, the reason my ministry is what it has been, and it still yet is, I'm still pastoring the church, is I let the Lord use me.
How many churches have you pastored, Dad?
Johnson, Blue Banks, Red Hill, and Wells Chapel where I'm at now. I guess that's the ones I really pastored as a pastor.
I remember you being for a while at Cranston in Kentucky.
Yeah, I pastored Cranston for that.
And
2 years.
Little Brushy or Big Brushy, I don't remember.
I preached there on Saturday nights. They didn't have a pastor. There'd been a Church of God for years, and it went down, and the floors was out of it and so forth. The old minister who worked there, most of them was gone, all but one. And I went over there and started preaching on Saturday evenings. And in a short time, we had the building back in good shape, roof on it, floors fixed, had great services there. That's the way I pastored there. That's what I said a while ago. I pastored maybe different, hip different to some pastors. But I preached on Sunday morning and Sunday night where I was really the pastor. I preached on Sunday evenings to try to help people that needed the pastor. And Saturday night. And God just blessed and helped, and every one of them. It wasn't long till they'd have them a church building, and God just blessed and helped in a way that we just couldn't understand. And I've asked this day a lot of times. People knows about my ministry. And I'll tell you, I said a little about that a second ago, but why have you had such a good, successful ministry, Brother Hinton? My answer is this, which is the very truth. I just let God use me. That's exactly what I've done. And at my old age, I'm still pastoring a church.
Tell me about Wells Chapel, when and how it all got started and what you've done there.
Wells Chapel, I started out, as I started to say a while ago, the quick as I got saved,
Okay, we're going to go back and recover some of the stuff because my battery ran out. I didn't know it was happening, and I wasn't watching, so I don't know how much we missed. So, I don't know. Tell us again about the churches that you pastored, the different churches that you pastored.
At Johnson, there's still a Church of God going strong there. That was my first pastor, and I pastored there for 12 years. Cranston, about 4 miles from there, they didn't have a pastor, and I pastored for them for about 3 years. From there, I went to Virginia, near Roanoke, Red Hill, and pastored a church there for 16 years. The old church house was just like a box sitting up on the hill. They owed a whole lot of money on it, more than it was worth. And while I was there, we built the church completely new outside and in, bricked it outside, put new walls and floors and basements and everything inside of it. A building that had $25,000 insurance on it when I went there. And after the 16 years when I left there, they had a recreation building. The church worked completely over, and I had $150,000 insurance on it, places a small amount they had to begin with, which was well worth that and more. That church is still going strong. And in revivals, I said I preach revivals all the time. I never asked for revival in my life. A lot of people ask for revival, and the Lord laid on their heart to go to certain places and preach revivals, and nothing against that. But the way I prayed about that for myself, Lord, if I can do anybody some good and they'd like to have a revival, you lay on the church's heart to call me. So I never asked for revival in my life, but I got calls all the time from people wanting me to preach revival. As I said, I'd see people saved, and so many times after a church, they wanted bluebacks. It's going strong now. In Round County, I preached a revival there. I told them they needed a church in that community. One fellow there, he was kind of a leader of the community. He's been going on the door for a long time. I said, Brother Hinton, we don't need a church here. So we got it built. Fellow gave the land. Wasn't a Christian. His son was. And like I said, there wasn't no time after getting built we would know anything on it. And that church is still going strong. But every place I got a church built, one in Jordantown in Virginia, I always got the land give. And I talked to the fellow that owned the land where they wanted to build the church there. And I told him, I said, now, I've helped get several churches built, but I always helped them to get who owned the land to give the land. Well, he said, you're barking up the wrong stump. I'm not giving it. I said, oh yeah, you'll give it. Just don't think I will. But he did. Made him a deed for us. That's all it cost him, writing the deed. And I don't know, some way, somehow, he wasn't a Christian. I could talk to people and they'd see the need of having a church in the community. Was able to be a blessing to them, to help them to get a church built, and I'm so thankful for that. And I don't owe no credit to myself, I owe it every bit to God. I just let the Lord use me and done what I felt like God wanted me to do, and what ought to be done for the community. And God just blessed us so much, and I'm so thankful for it. What I'm really thankful for is my family and my ministry. God gave me a good family, 4 children, they're all living.
You told me earlier, Dad, that you had pastored at Johnson, Kentucky, Cranston in Kentucky, Blue Banks, Round County, Kentucky, and Red Hill in Virginia. And Little Brushy, was it Little Brushy?
Yeah.
And there were some other churches that you pastored, not on Sunday morning and Sunday night necessarily, but as you were pastoring one church, you would work with another church on Saturdays, or tell me a little about that again.
One of them I said was Cooper's Chapel, and one of them was in Virginia when they wanted to build a new church up there at Jordantown. the person come to me and asked me, said they told me why, and they sure did need it all right. What was going on, they didn't like it, and asked me if I could help them get a new church building, have a church built. And they started talking to me, in Dublin. He said, whatever name is, don't make a bit of difference in the world. Whenever I see it makes all the difference to me, Church of God, First Church of God. And I'll see if I can't help you get it built. I got the land used, and did build it. It's still going strong today, thank God for that. I don't know.
Tell me about Wells Chapel. That's where you are now, and you were instrumental in getting the church there started and have been connected to it for a long, long time. So tell me about Wells Chapel.
Wells Chapel, I preached the revival to a place called Adel, about 6 miles, 5 or 6 miles from Wells Chapel. They had an old school bus that belonged to the church, and it had a Sunday school and an old school building. And Homer Fletcher was driving the school bus at the revival at Adel. He had a busload of people there every night. And as I said, there was 35 or 36 people claimed victory, and most of them off of Stacy Fork, where Wells Chapel is. An old man named Mac Payton, he owned the land where the church is at, and God laid on his heart. He had a lot of timber, some money. He gave the timber, had the lumber sawed, built the auditorium. There's been a lot more built to the church now. And he asked me, he said, Brother Hinton, said, I would like to call the church name, I want to talk to you about it, First Church of God at Wells Chapel, if you think that'll be all right. He said, I'll tell you the reason why I want to call it Wells Chapel. He owned the land where the church was there, but he just did not own it very long, but he'd married a Wells, and her parish is the one that owned the land. So it's been the Wells family that land has here for over 100 years until I bought it. And he said, that's the reason I'd like to call it Wells Chapel. First Church of God at Wells Chapel. I said, that's fine with me. So that's where it come the name, and then it was a Stacy Fork was a post office. And the fellow there said the original name wasn't Wells Chapel, it was Stacy Fork, whatever the post office name. I said, no, that was the location of it, but I said it was. So he said he think he ought to go back to the original name. And I talked to a fellow, David Payton. I said, now when I leave this world, is the fellow going to try to get this changed back to the original name? And I said, the original name is the First Church of God at Wells Chapel. I told him how. He said, you don't have to explain that to me. He said, I was right there when they called and what's he going to name it? He said, my dad was there, my granddad was there, and they talked it over in the schoolhouse and said, knowing the church house, what's he going to call it? That's what it was built. I said, that's the name they decided. I said, I won't have nobody to explain. I said, I know what the name of it is. And I'm thankful for that.
You remember what year it was when they built it? When you started the congregation there?
I can tell you nothing, you can figure it up in about a minute. I preached the homecoming service, second Sunday in July. This past year was the 50th year. Been there 50 years now. And I've preached the homecoming service there every year, and I've preached the revival there every year since the church has been there, and I'm pastoring the church now, and I'm old. I talked to him possibly 3 months ago, And I told him, I said, now you need it, I'm old, and you ought to get you a new pastor. I've named that several times to him. Within a couple of months, 3 or 4 times I named that to him. The last time I named it to him, here was the answer I got from standing people in the church house that morning. You're the pastor we want. So as long as they wanted, I guess that's what they'll have. But I'm so thankful. It ain't what I've done, it's what I've let God do with me. I couldn't have done anything. Everybody's a failure without the help of God. And I always preached when I called in the ministry. I couldn't read a verse in the Bible. I didn't think there's no way I could preach. But I started working, and I know God had called me, learned to read, and God just anointed me and blessed my ministry. And I've never preached a message from the first message that I preached till this day. And Sunday morning, I guess I'll be preaching at the church. I've never preached a message all that time. What I've said, Lord, I've done said about this one. You link the Bible together for me to make the message. I can't do it. He never has failed me. He's always done that. And I'm sure now that he always will do that. And the message I'll be preaching Sunday morning, if it goes on until here, I've already said that to him, Lord, I can't link her together. You'll have to do it for me. And it's wonderful. When you get up to preach, God will link them words together faster almost than you can utter them. I've had so many people say they wish they could just get up there and rattle it off. That's what they say, like I did. I can't, but God can.
Let me ask you another question or two. Most people are pretty lucky if they get a good wife in life. I know you and Mom got married Christmas Day, 1929. And the Lord took her home in 1989, just a few months before you had 60 years of marriage. You were not exactly a young kid at the time, but somehow you managed to find a little girl named Dorothy Legg, who was also widowed. And tell me about that.
That's been 13 years back when we was wedded. When your mother, she'd been sick for, Lacey had been sick for a few years. And she said to me one day, honey, said, you're well, and I'm sick, and said, I'm not going to live much longer. Said, you're going to live a long time after I leave this world. Said, I want you to hunt you a good Christian woman and marry again. That's exactly what I done. I had a good helper in my first wife in my ministry, and I've got a good helper today in my ministry. We have been married 13 years. She loves to work in the church. First time I took her home from senior citizen, I wanted to be honest with her. And before we got quiet to her house, I said, Dorothy, if you don't like church, you don't want to get acquainted with me, that's my life. She said, I love church. I just like one kind of preaching, that's Bible. I said, you don't have to worry. That's what I preach. And she's been a great help in my ministry. Thank God for what the Lord's done. God brings us together. But on that Easter Sunday, I went to the schoolhouse where they're having church with intention to try to go home with Letty, my key. I got there, and her best girlfriend was there. They both know me. And her girlfriend said, if Ivan Hinton goes up this road, I'm taking me home with me today. Now this is what Lethe said. She said to herself, I'll see about that. So we started up the road, and I was already mind to try to take her home, you see. She said, do you like duck eggs? I said, yeah, we like hen eggs to death. I said, I'm having duck eggs for dinner. You want to come and help eat them? I said, I'll be right there. I'll go with you. So that's when our courtship started, and that was on Easter Sunday. We got married on Christmas Day that year. The first year of our married life, back when times was hard, lucky to make any money at all. We're in the place in Mason County near Mays Lake, getting $1.25 working for one man, $1.50 working for another man, which was at least 50, 75 cents above wages then. And I worked out over $250 that year. And the 3 acres of tobacco that we raised, I had 4,500 pounds. The prettiest tobacco that you ever seen cured dirty, when tobacco was about 10 cents a pound. This crop was good enough when it's sold. It brought 25 cents a pound, and our half of the check was $520. So
Now, did you raise tobacco throughout your life?
I raised tobacco until 37. I didn't want my children to use tobacco. And where you started your crop then, that's what I was doing, topping my tobacco. Already had it raised that year. And you save your tobacco seed in your own patch to sow your tobacco bed the next year. And I didn't want my children to use tobacco. I know I was going to try to keep them from it. And when I thought about that, I thought, well, now, if somebody's children don't use it, I can't sell my tobacco. Am I going to try to correct my children for using tobacco and raise it for somebody else's? And I quit raising tobacco that year. Never did raise another crop, and that's the reason why I didn't. Somebody said, well, there's no wrong in raising tobacco. I said, I didn't say it was, but I said it would have been wrong for me to try to correct my children from doing something I was trying to furnish the stuff for the other people's children to do it with. And that's the reason why I quit raising tobacco. Now then, I didn't act foolish about that. How do you know you didn't? I said, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, you help me to make a living without doing it. And if it's not what you want to do, you make it so hard I'll have to go back to it. From that day on, I made more money than I'd been making. And that's the answer to the prayer. I know that if I quit raising tobacco at the same time, tobacco got from 10 cents a pound to was about $1 a pound. He said to me one day, he said, Brother Hinton, you reckon we ought to go back to raise tobacco? You reckon we made a mistake? It's getting awful high now. I said, I don't know about you, but I didn't. I know that God has blessed me, making money, been more than it was when I was raising tobacco. I never did like to raise tobacco for this reason. Not at that time, before I was a Christian, I didn't think of it that way. But the reason I didn't like it, you got one payday a year. That's when you sold it back, and them paydays are just way too far apart.
Let me get you to jump forward again. We jumped back. Oh, we jumped way, way, way back a while ago, 100 years, I think. But anyway, back up to Wells Chapel and Dorothy. You guys, for a long, long time, after you were married, had a real active visitation program where you visited people's homes each week on Wednesday, I think, and maybe at other days, and did some service in convalescent homes and the like that. How about sharing some of that with us?
That's been going on ever since in fact, before we got married, we started doing that. that's been going on, and we still doing that. And at Salyerville nursing home have about 25 or 30 people every Wednesday. They call me their pastor. They can't go to church nowhere. We take church to them. And other at Roanoke, Virginia, in the hospital, once a month on Sunday we have service. And nursing home, I said Roanoke in we have church. And we're still going on. We go all the time. People don't understand why, but I don't have any trouble understanding why at all. That's what I want to do. That's what I have done. What I will do, as long as I can able. I used to say as long as I had knowledge to know, was able to stand, I'd still be preaching. But an awful lot of time, I'm not standing, I'm sitting preaching more than I stand. But I'm still preaching. And I've been asked several times when it's going to retire or quit preaching. I said, I'm not. As long as I got my right mind, able to think, I'll still be telling people about the love of God and preaching to them, as I've already seen. Told them they ought to get a new pastor as old as I was getting. They just plain told me about a couple of months ago or something like that. They had the pastor they wanted. So I guess I'll stay right there. And I said a while ago, this past year on second Sunday in July, homecoming service, and this is the 50th year that I preached the homecoming service there. And that's where I will finish my ministry, no doubt about that. I'll be right there the rest of my ministry, working with the people there. And they love me very, very much. I haven't had everything smooth, but nobody else hasn't. Jesus didn't. And Jesus tells us some things that can be a help to us. Some people don't believe what you preach. You know what? They didn't believe what Jesus preached. But he didn't quit because he didn't believe it. There may be some people don't believe what I preach, but I'm not going to quit because they don't believe it. I'm still going to preach the Bible to them, just like Jesus. Go right on for the Lord. And Jesus tells you plainly, do not think strange if people does you wrong. Just think about what they done to him, and if they done him that way, they will you. So that helps you a lot in life. Just think what Jesus had to go through. And a lot of people talks about what hard time the church is having today. And a lot of people guilty of that. But the churches, back when I started, and on back before that time, back when Paul lived here, they was beating them with stripes, was putting them in prison, was putting them to death. Paul himself even gave consent to Stephen's death, held the coats of them that stoned him, and so forth. And the prayer that Stephen prayed put him under conviction the way I see it. Because whenever he was going down the road, Damascus was ordered from the high authority, from the high priest to bind whoever he found that way, Damascus, he met Jesus, fell to the earth, said, Lord, who art thou? And he said, I'm Jesus, the one you're persecuting. Hard for you to go against the Spirit of God that's pricking at your heart. He could have said, you've been under conviction ever since the day that you held the coats when they were stoning Paul, and you heard him pray, and the Lord would not lay that sin to your charge. And I think he'd been under conviction from that day until the day he repented and got right with the Lord. Started preaching the gospel and telling people the wonderful plan of salvation. God will use us if we'll let him. God bless you.
Go.
I'm Ivan Hinton Jr., the eldest son of Ivan Hinton Sr., born in 1941, June